Snow tore through the trees like shards of glass, stinging against her skin, biting deep into her lungs. Arya ran barefoot, each step cutting into frozen earth, blood mixing with the snow, until every footprint she left behind was painted red. The storm howled above her, a cruel reminder that she was alone, unwanted and hunted. Her chest burned, not just from the cold, but from the weight of chains that still bruised her wrists. The metal was gone now, broken when she fled, but its memory clung like a phantom, every scar whispering that she had been owned, enslaved, less than human in the eyes of those who called themselves her kin. Behind her, the mercenaries gave chase, heavy boots, snarling voices, the crack of branches snapping under their weight. They didn't tire. They didn't stumble. They wanted her back. Not because she was valuable, not because she mattered, but because breaking her spirit was sport, because seeing her crawl reminded them of their power. The forest was merciless. The blizzard clawed at her, shrieking through the branches, drowning her gasps. Frost clung to her lashes, turning the world into a blur of white shadows and black silhouettes. Every direction looked the same, every tree another wall, and still, she ran. Because stopping meant capture. Stopping meant chains again. Her body screamed for rest, but deep beneath the exhaustion, beneath the cold and blood and terror, something else stirred. A burning, a restless heat thrumming in her veins, pulsing with every frantic heartbeat. She hated it. She feared it, because the last time she let it out, people screamed. The last time, fire spilled from her skin like liquid silver, and an elder fell lifeless at her feet. That was the night they branded her cursed. That was the night she lost everything. Her breath hitched as a memory struck her mid-stride. Her knees in the dirt, a whip slashing across her back while the crowd watched. Laughter, jeers. A hand forcing her face down as they called her nothing more than a beast to be broken. She had sworn then, sworn through blood and tears, that if she ever broke free, no chain would ever touch her again. But freedom tasted bitter when danger hunted her every step. A howl ripped through the night. Closer this time, too close. Her heart jolted, slamming against her ribs. They were gaining. Panic clawed at her throat, but she forced herself to keep moving. Her bare feet slipped on ice, her body crashing into a tree trunk. Pain exploded across her shoulder, but she didn't cry out. She bit it back, dragging herself up, because sound would give her away. The silver flame flickered under her skin, begging to be unleashed. Her vision shimmered, her palms tingling with heat, even as frostbite gnawed at her fingers. But if she used it, if she lost control again, she might burn more than her enemies. She might burn herself. Snow clung to her hair, her lips cracked with cold, yet her eyes, those eyes still held defiance, broken, battered, hunted, but not surrendered. And still, a cruel voice in her mind whispered, "You will be caught. You were born to be a slave. You will die a slave." Her knees buckled, lungs wheezing, but she pushed forward. Every breath was pain, every heartbeat, a war. Somewhere inside, hope still burned, fragile, faint, but alive. The storm roared louder, swallowing the sound of her hunters for a heartbeat, and in that small silence, she whispered to herself, no, she promised herself, never again, not this time. And you, listening now, before Arya's fate is sealed, will you stand with her? Will you walk beside her, as she fights for freedom, for love, for a place in a world that wants her destroyed? If her pain has already touched you, if her fire has already sparked inside you, then subscribe to Clarissa Romance Collections, because here, love defies chains, and destiny is rewritten. The blizzard raged on, but Arya's body could no longer obey her will. Her legs, raw and bleeding, buckled beneath her. She stumbled into darkness, the mouth of a cave hidden behind tangled roots and jagged stone. Cold air rushed over her like knives, but inside there was at least shelter from the storm. Her chest heaved, ragged gasps, echoing off stone walls. The silver fire still pulsed beneath her skin, restless, aching to be set free, yet she shoved it down as she collapsed to her knees. The cave swallowed her whole, shadows stretching deeper than her eyes could pierce. She dragged herself across the frozen floor, leaving a faint trail of blood. Her arms trembled, her body quaked, and then silence. The storm's howl faded outside, replaced by her shallow, shuddering breaths. Her vision blurred, darkness creeping at the edges. Somewhere, she thought she heard footsteps. Heavy, slow, too deliberate to be wind or storm. She wanted to rise, to fight, but her body betrayed her. The world tilted, spun, and then surrendered her to blackness. When she opened her eyes again, the storm was gone. The cave was no longer empty. She wasn't alone. Two golden flames burned above her, too steady to be torches, too alive to be anything but eyes. Eyes that watched her without blinking. They gleamed in the shadows, ancient and unyielding, the way fire watches, kindling before it consumes it. Her heart jolted. She tried to sit up, but her muscles screamed. Her wrists shook, as if chains still bound them. Yet the chains were gone. Instead, a figure crouched before her, his broad frame, half lit by the dying glow of an ember fire. He didn't move closer. He didn't speak at first. He only watched. And when he finally spoke, his voice was a low rumble, like the earth itself shifting. Arya. The sound of her name shattered her like ice. Her lips parted, but no words came. She had never told him. She had never told anyone, beyond her captors. Yet here in this cave, this stranger's voice carried her name like he had always known it. Her throat tightened. Fear pricked at her skin. How? Her voice cracked, weak, breathless. How do you know me? The man leaned into the firelight, and she saw him fully. Scars cut across his cheek, down his jaw, and into the column of his throat. Marks of battles survived, but never forgotten. His hair, black as the cavern behind him, fell to his shoulders in loose strands, damp from the storm. And his eyes, those burning gold eyes, held no mercy. Only weight, only history. Arya's heart hammered. Every instinct screamed danger. Yet something deeper, something primal, pulled her closer even as she pressed herself back against the stone wall. You shouldn't be here, he said, his voice edged with something sharp. Anger, or pain, she couldn't tell. I didn't choose this, she whispered, though the words felt too small against the gravity of his gaze. For a long, tense moment, neither moved. The silence between them thickened until it pressed against her chest harder than the storm outside. And then, at last, he spoke again, quieter this time. You're hunted. They want you alive, but barely breathing. Do you know why? Her lips trembled. She shook her head. They say I'm cursed. A faint shadow of a smile, bitter not kind, touched his mouth. Cursed, or chosen. Her stomach twisted. Chosen. She hated the word. She had heard it before, whispered by those who feared her, spat by those who despised her. Before she could reply, another sound broke through the cave. Voices. Echoing. Faint but approaching. Arya's pulse spiked. The mercenaries. They had tracked her even here. She tried to rise, but her legs gave out. Her nails scraped stone. Panic roared through her veins. She couldn't fight. She couldn't run. But the man before her, he didn't flinch. He rose slowly, towering, his frame filling the cave's entrance, as if he was part of the mountain itself. His shoulders rolled back, and in that instant, the air shifted. Heat. It poured off him, searing, powerful, unnatural. The fire in his eyes brightened, molten gold spilling like liquid light. And then his skin rippled. His bones groaned. She had heard stories of alphas, of shifters, but never like this. Wings unfurled. Black scales tore through flesh, gleaming as though forged from obsidian. Claws curved, dragging sparks against stone. A dragon. A nightmare. A god dressed in fury. The cave itself shook under the weight of him. His roar thundered against the walls. a sound that split the storm outside, silencing even the wind. Arya's body froze, torn between terror and awe. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. Yet somewhere inside, something answered him. The silver fire under her skin pulsed, surging higher, as if his presence called to it. The mercenaries' voices outside faltered, then screams, the clash of bodies hitting earth, the sickening crack of bones breaking. Shadows of men fled past the mouth of the cave, some too slow to escape the dragon's fury. Arya pressed her hands to her mouth, eyes wide, every nerve alight with shock. She had thought she knew fear. She had thought chains and whips were the worst agony the world could give. But this raw, overwhelming power made her feel like nothing, small, breakable, invisible. And yet, as the dragon turned his head back toward her, those same golden eyes locking onto hers, she couldn't look away. The fire beneath her skin surged hotter, aching, hungry. In the space between heartbeats, she realized something impossible. She wasn't just afraid of him. She was drawn to him. When the dragon shifted back, the man stood once more, chest heaving, skin damp with sweat, black hair clinging to his face. His scars glistened under the faint firelight. His eyes never left hers. "They once at return," he said flatly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "What are you?" His jaw tightened. "What I've always been. What they fear. What you are not ready to see." Arya swallowed hard. Her body shook, not just from exhaustion, but from something else, something deeper. Distrust clawed at her. She had trusted before, and it had cost her everything. But here, in this cave, with this man whose power eclipsed anything she had ever imagined, her instincts warred against reason. Because even though fear screamed inside her, her soul whispered another truth. She was not safe from him, but perhaps she was safe with him. And that terrified her most of all. The cave was quiet now. The storm outside had softened to a muted howl, the snow falling slower, like ash drifting down from a world already burned. But inside the silence was heavy, thick with all the unspoken truths pressing between them. Arya sat with her back against the stone wall, knees pulled close, her body trembling from both exhaustion and the way his golden eyes still lingered on her. Chaol had not asked again. He hadn't spoken since shifting back. But silence didn't mean peace. It meant waiting, watching, measuring. And Arya? She hated the way her body betrayed her under that gaze. She hated that her pulse leapt whenever his attention lingered, that a thread of heat ran through her even as her mind screamed, "Stay wary." She closed her eyes, just for a moment, but memory did not give her rest. Instead, it opened its claws and dragged her back to the beginning of her curse. Her father's voice was the first thing that returned, a low whisper in the night, filled with promises he had no right to make. "We'll be free soon, Arya. Just a little longer. Just trust me." She had trusted him. She was a child, desperate for his approval, clinging to every smile he gave. But freedom was not what he gave her. His betrayal shattered more than the pack's loyalty. It shattered her place in the world. He had turned on his alpha. He had handed secrets to enemies, believing he could bargain for power, and when the truth spilled, it wasn't just him they punished. It was her, his blood, his shame. The brand came next, searing hot metal pressed into her skin, just above her heart. A mark no shifting could erase. Slave blood, unworthy. She had screamed that night, until her throat tore raw, but no one cared. Their faces had looked down on her like she was dirt beneath their boots. She remembered the whip, the chains, the way the other young wolves looked at her like she was already dead. Every moment of her childhood stolen, twisted into servitude. Her back still carried the scars. But worst of all, the silver flame. The first time it came, she hadn't meant it. She hadn't even known what lived inside her. The elder had cornered her, hand raised to strike, and fear had done the rest. Fire erupted from her skin, silver as moonlight, searing the man where he stood. His body hit the ground before she understood what had happened. The crowd gasped. Someone screamed her name, and in that instant, she wasn't just branded as slave blood. She was cursed, dangerous, untouchable. They dragged her to the square, forced her to her knees, spat at her. Demon girl, murderer, monster. They didn't care that it was self-defense. They didn't care she was a child. All they saw was the fire that frightened them. All they wanted was to make her less than nothing. That night, they chained her tighter, not just with iron, with shame, with exile, with the crushing weight of being unwanted. Her chest ached as the memory loosened its grip. She blinked and found herself back in the cave, Cale still across from her. His eyes had softened, not in pity, but in recognition, like a man staring at wounds he carried himself. "You think you're the only one cursed," he said finally, voice low, threaded with something darker than sympathy. Arya stiffened. "What do you know about it?" He leaned back against the stone, the firelight carving shadows into his scars. Enough. His jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he would leave it there. But then his gaze lifted, steady and unflinching. "I had a mate once. She was everything the pack told me I could never deserve. She believed in me when even my blood turned against me." He paused. His breath caught, barely, but she heard it. "She died because of my brother, because I trusted him." His hands flexed, claws threatening to break skin even in human form. "He wanted what I had, power, territory, her, and when I refused him, he took the one thing he knew would break me." The firelight trembled in his eyes, and Arya realized the truth. Those scars on his face weren't his deepest wounds, they were only the surface. The real scars were carved inside, hollowing him, feeding that gold flame with grief and rage. For a long time, neither spoke. The storm outside had quieted, leaving only the crackle of embers and the slow, steady rhythm of two broken souls sharing air. Arya swallowed. She wanted to tell him she understood. That betrayal wasn't just a cut, it was poison. It seeped into everything, corroding trust, rotting hope. But the words caught in her throat. Instead, she whispered, "Why did you save me?" Cale's eyes narrowed, as if the question itself was dangerous. "Because I know what they'll do to you if they catch you. Because I've seen it before. And because—" He hesitated, his voice hardening. "Because you're not what they say you are." Her chest tightened. The words should have comforted her. Instead, they terrified her. Not because they were cruel, but because they were kind. She didn't know what to do with kindness anymore. Days passed, though neither spoke of time. She remained in the cave, wounds slowly knitting under the care of a silent healer. Cale brought, a woman with eyes sharp as hawks, and hands that glowed faintly as she worked. The healer barely looked at Arya, except once, when her fingers brushed the brand over Arya's heart. The healer's eyes flared with recognition, then fear. When she finished, she turned to Cale and said only, "She carries power, more than even she knows. Be careful, Alpha. The flame doesn't choose lightly." The words haunted Arya, long after the healer left. It wasn't only whispers of power that marked her days. The pack came too. Not all at once, but in fragments. Wolves who wanted to glimpse the stranger their Alpha had dragged from the snow. Some looked with curiosity, some with disdain, and one with hatred sharp enough to bleed the air. She was beautiful, that she-wolf, raven hair braided tight, eyes the color of ice, posture dripping with confidence. She didn't bother hiding her sneer. "You brought her here?" the rival spat, standing before Cale, like she had every right to challenge him. "After everything she's done? After what she is?" Arya's fists clenched, but she said nothing. She didn't need to. The other woman's contempt was louder than any insult. Cale didn't rise to the bait, but his silence spoke volumes. He wouldn't explain himself. He wouldn't defend Arya, and that silence burned worse than the sneer. That night, Arya dreamed. She stood before a throne made of blackened bone, flames licking its edges, chains dozens of them, wrapped around her wrists, her throat, her waist. She pulled until her skin tore, But the chains only tightened. Above her, a voice boomed, heavy with prophecy. The child of flame will rise. The child of flame will burn. The silver fire within her answered, searing through the chains, melting them into liquid light. She screamed as it consumed her body splitting open, her skin cracking like porcelain, and from within poured fire that did not end. When she woke, her hands were glowing faintly, silver embers pulsing under her skin. Cale was there, watching. Another nightmare? His voice was quiet, but she heard the unspoken weight in it. He knew. He saw more than she wanted him to. She turned away, pressing trembling hands into the cold stone. It wasn't just a dream. I know. His answer sent a shiver through her. Because if he knew, then what was she really? And worse, what would she become? The night after her hands burned with silver flame, Cale said nothing. He didn't demand answers, nor did he offer comfort. But when dawn broke pale and brittle through the snowstorm, he gave a single order: "Come with me." There was no argument, not because she trusted him, but because something in his tone made refusal impossible. It wasn't command, it was inevitability. They rode in silence, the mountain winds biting at her skin, her thoughts a storm far louder than the gale around them. The wolves of his pack followed at a distance, their wary eyes pricking her back like daggers. None of them knew why Cale had chosen this path. Perhaps even Cale didn't know, but his grip on the reins was tight, his jaw set, and the weight in the air was the same as before a lightning strike. The path ended at a ravine. Beyond it stood the shrine, or what remained of it. Stone pillars, cracked and leaning, clawed toward the sky like the bones of giants. Walls carved with symbols had long since crumbled, but fragments remained, runes etched deep enough to resist time, faintly pulsing under the touch of moonlight. The air itself changed as they approached, denser, charged, like the mountain had been holding its breath for centuries, waiting. Arya's steps slowed. Her skin prickled. Something in her blood responded, hot and restless, as if the shrine recognized her. She swallowed hard, fighting the urge to turn back. Cale watched her carefully. His expression was unreadable, but the golden flare in his eyes betrayed that even he felt the shift. "Do you know what this place is?" She shook her head. "No." He stepped closer, his voice low, reverent. "This is where the first flame was bound, where the gods spoke their last words before vanishing from our world." The words sank into her bones like lead, and yet the heat in her veins grew sharper, insistent, as though the shrine called her by name. The moment her palm brushed one of the broken stones, everything changed. The rune beneath her fingers flared, not with the dull glow of moonlight, but with living fire, silver, wild, fierce. It raced along the cracks, crawling across the ruins, awakening what had long been asleep. The air trembled. Wolves behind her growled, some in awe, some in fear. One fell to his knees. Another snarled, baring teeth. And then the voice came. Not aloud, not in sound, but inside her, filling every hollow space of her chest. "The child of flame shall break the yoke of chains. When the world drowns in shadow, she shall rise. She will burn, she will free, or she will end all things." Arya's knees buckled. The prophecy carved itself into her mind with fire, searing deeper than memory, deeper than thought. She gasped, clutching the stone, her blood singing like molten metal. Cale caught her before she fell. His grip was iron, steady, anchoring her against the storm unraveling within. His face hovered close, his breath hot against her cheek, his golden eyes sharp with questions he didn't dare voice in front of the others. The shrine pulsed once more, then fell silent. The glow dimmed, leaving only scorched symbols and a pack divided by what they had just witnessed. "She seps the one," a voice whispered. "She seps doom," another spat. The arguments broke like wildfire. Some wolves pressed to the front, bowing low, trembling with reverence. Others bared their teeth, demanding Cale put an end to her before the prophecy fulfilled itself. Arya stood amidst the chaos, her chest heaving, her heart still ablaze with the echo of the voice. She wanted to scream. She wasn't what they thought, that she hadn't asked for this. But the words wouldn't come, because deep inside, she wasn't sure it was a lie. Cale raised a hand, and silence cracked through the uproar. His presence alone quieted them. His voice was cold steel. Enough. You will not touch her. Not until I decide what she is. Not who. What. The word cut deeper than any blade. That night, the moon hung heavy above the shrine ruins, fat and luminous, bleeding light into the snow. Cale led her away from the pack's eyes, into a hollow where the stone still stood upright, untouched by ruin. Sit, he said. The command was quiet, but she obeyed. Something in the air demanded it. He drew a circle in ash, around her, his claws precise, each stroke deliberate. Symbols followed, ancient sigils she didn't know, though part of her blood recoiled at their weight. What are you doing? She whispered. Vision quest, he answered, voice taut. The prophecy doesn't reveal to the ears alone. You'll see what it means or nothing at all. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to spit back that she'd seen enough fire for a lifetime. But when the wind hushed, when the world narrowed to moonlight and stone, she felt the pull. The shrine had not finished with her. Cale sliced his palm and let blood fall onto the sigils. They hissed, flaring gold. The ash circle tightened, and then the world tilted. She fell. Not into darkness, but into flame. A sky ablaze with silver fire stretched above her, chains raining from it like meteors. They struck the ground around her, pinning wolves, dragons, men, everything writhing, enslaved, and in the center, a throne of fire waited, empty, burning. She stumbled forward, her body both hers and not. Every chain she touched burned away. Every step she took made the fire brighter. When she reached the throne, her reflection stared back from the flames. But it wasn't her as she was. It was her crowned in silver light, her eyes burning like twin suns, her skin veined with fire. She looked monstrous. She looked divine. The voice thundered again. Chains break. Thrones burn. The child of flame chooses the world's fate. The vision shattered. She gasped awake in the snow, the circle of ash smoldering. Cale was there, gripping her shoulders. His face close, too close. His eyes searched hers like he could drag the prophecy out, if she dared hide it. What did you see? Her lips trembled. Chains. Fire. A throne that wasn't mine. And me burning everything. Something in his jaw tightened, but his grip didn't loosen. The following days were not peace. The pack split sharper with each passing hour. Some whispered prayers to her when they thought she couldn't hear. Others spat the word doomspawn as though it would stain her into nothing. Cale bore the weight of their division, but his silence toward her was heavier. He didn't condemn. He didn't embrace. He simply watched, torn between protector and executioner. One night, deep in the ruins, they found it. A dragon bone, buried beneath collapsed stone, older than any of them could measure, blackened by time, massive, humming faintly with ancient power. The wolves shrank back, but when Arya's hand brushed it, the bone ignited with silver light, veins of fire racing through its marrow. The glow reflected in Cale's eyes. For a moment, awe softened his face. For a moment he looked at her not as a burden, not as a threat, but as something wondrous. And that terrified her most of all. Because wonder could turn to worship. Worship could turn to ruin. And she could not tell yet if Cale would be the one to save her, or the one to end her. The night of the sacred moon ritual began with silence. Not peace. Silence. A silence too sharp, too brittle, like a blade pressed against the skin of the world. The shrine ruins glowed under the swollen moon, its silver light bleeding over snow and stone, over the ash symbols still scarred from Arya's vision. Wolves circled the altar in solemn rhythm, their voices rising in ancient chants, older than Cale's bloodline. Arya stood within the circle, the fire in her veins restless, the prophecy's echo still burning behind her ribs. Her pulse matched the rhythm of the chants. She hated that part of her leaned toward the sound, wanted to belong, wanted to step into their howl as though she had a place in it. But she had no place. The look stabbing into her skin reminded her of that truth. Cale stood on the opposite side of the circle, his shoulders a wall of steel, his eyes never leaving her. He was the Alpha. Yes, but more than that tonight. He was her anchor. The only reason she still stood while the world's weight pressed hard against her chest. But the silence broke. It came with the scent of smoke. Not the smoke of ritual fire, but the acrid bite of something foreign, tainted. Wolves stiffened, their chants faltering. Cale's head snapped up, gold burning in his gaze. The wind shifted, and from the tree line they came. A rival Alpha's pack, shadows pouring into the shrine like a flood of fangs and claws. Their leader moved at the front, towering, his aura a black storm that seemed to gnash at the moonlight itself. His eyes burned red, his grin feral. He had been waiting for this moment. Dragon Alpha, the rival sneered, his voice a rasp of malice. You shelter the curse, you call her flame salvation. Tonight, I burn both of you from the world. The shrine erupted into chaos. Fire and claws met in the snow. Cale shifted with a roar that split the night open, his form bursting into dragon flesh and wings that tore through cloud and storm. His scales blazed with molten gold, his breath a furnace that scorched the ground where enemies fell. Arya's heart stopped at the sight. He was not just Alpha, he was destruction incarnate. But the rival wolves did not cower. They surged forward, their bodies twisting into monstrous half-shifts, limbs grotesque with shadows, claws tipped with venom. They hurled themselves at Cale's pack with merciless hunger. The shrine stones cracked under the force. Wolves screamed. The sky itself seemed to shake, as dragon wings beat against the storm. Arya fought to breathe. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't trained. Her wrists still bore the raw scars of chains. Yet when a snarling beast lunged toward her, she moved. The silver fire within her ripped free, not fully, not the way it had in her vision, but enough to sear. Her palm flared, striking the wolf across the chest. Flesh sizzled. He fell screaming into the snow. Her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't meant to burn that deep. She hadn't meant to feel that surge of power. Ecstasy and terror tangled in her veins. Then another came, and another. Her body moved as if it remembered a dance she had never learned, ducking, striking, fire spilling from her hands in jagged bursts. Each time it answered, she lost another piece of herself. Another scrap of fear burned away. Another fragment of shame scorched into ash. But the fire was wild. It clawed at her from the inside, threatening to consume her as much as her enemies. Cale saw, even in the storm of battle, even as his claws split throats and his wings tore through flesh, his gaze found hers. For a flicker of a heartbeat, something raw and furious twisted in his expression, not anger at her, but at the sight of her standing, where blades and death reigned. And in that heartbeat, she almost fell. A shadow wolf lunged for his unguarded flank, its fangs venom black, its body built for killing alphas. Arya didn't think. She ran. Her body slammed into Cale's side, shoving him out of reach just as the beast struck. The venomous fangs sank deep into her shoulder instead. Pain exploded white-hot, the kind that steals air, that makes the body convulse against its will. Her scream ripped through the battlefield, drowning even the clash of wings and claws. Cale's roar followed, a sound that made the earth quake. The dragon's fury was legend. Tonight it was apocalypse. Flames burst from his chest, a torrent that scorched everything within reach. Enemies shrieked as fire devoured them, their shadows turning to ash before they could even collapse. His claws ripped the beast from Arya's shoulder, tearing it apart with a savagery that left no doubt he would burn the world itself if it dared touch her again. Arya crumpled into the snow, her blood staining it black, where venom seeped from the wound. She tried to breathe, but her lungs seized. She tried to rise, but her limbs trembled. The fire within her fought the poison, raging, burning her veins from inside out. Kale's massive body shielded her, his dragon form curling around her like a wall of living flame, his golden eyes, searing with both fury and fear, locked on hers. "Stay alive," his voice thundered, fractured between dragon and man. "Do you hear me? Stay." The battle raged until the last shadow fell. Smoke clung to the ruins. Snow melted into mud, where fire had licked the ground raw. Wolves lay wounded, some dead, their bodies forming grim constellations across the shrine floor. But no silence followed. Instead came voices, accusing, panicked, sharp. "This is her fault," one wolf spat, clutching a bleeding arm. "The prophecy draws death. She brought them here. She's cursed," another howled. "She burns everything she touches." The council elders, old and brittle but heavy with authority, pushed forward, their eyes fixed on Arya, who still bled into the snow, barely upright. "You endanger us all," one elder said, his voice trembling with venom. "Your fire is poison. You should have never set foot in these mountains. Leave," another commanded. "Leave before you bring destruction none of us can survive." Kale stood before her like a shield, his chest rising and falling, his scales still smoking from battle, his gaze cut into the council like a blade. "You saw what she did," he growled. "She fought. She saved me." "She cursed you," the elder hissed. "Already she twists the Alpha's judgment. Already she risks our survival." Kale's jaw clenched, every muscle in his body taut, as though he might break in half from the strain of choosing his pack, his duty, or the girl whose blood stained his claws. Arya's heart twisted as she watched him, the weight of his silence heavier than the venom in her veins. She knew the truth of it. If he chose her, he would lose them. If he chose them, he would kill her. And in that fragile breath between choice and destruction, she whispered, her voice hoarse but unbroken, "Kale, don't set." Because she knew what it cost him. Because part of her would rather die than see him break. But Kale did not move. His golden eyes, burning with fury, despair, and something deeper than either, never left hers. And in that moment, the world itself seemed to wait for his answer. The poison nearly took her. Arya drifted in and out of fever, her body racked by shivers, even as the fire in her veins burned hotter than ever. She dreamed of chains tightening around her wrists, of flames devouring her skin from the inside, of Cal's eyes, gold, furious, desperate, watching her slip away. When she woke, she wasn't in the shrine ruins. She was in a hidden cave, the walls glowing faintly with the light of a fire that hissed and snapped as if keeping vigil. She was wrapped in furs, the scent of dragon fire and storm clinging to them. And he was there. Kale sat beside her, his massive frame bent low, his hand resting close to hers, but never touching, as though he wanted to anchor her, yet feared he might break her further. His eyes, usually a blazing gold, softened when they met hers. For a moment, all the warlord, all the alpha, all the dragon was gone. Only a man remained, one whose world would have cracked if she hadn't woken. "You're safe," he murmured. His voice was rough, scraped raw, but low enough that it felt like a secret. Her lips trembled. "You stayed. I wasn't set leaving." The hours bled together. She slept, woke, slept again, and each time he was there, he fed the fire. He pressed cool cloths against her burning skin. When nightmares clawed at her, he caught her wrists before she could scratch herself raw, murmuring words in a language she didn't know but felt deep in her chest. One night, when the fever broke and her breath no longer rattled, he sat across from her, the firelight licking over his scars. He stripped off his tunic, slow, deliberate, until his chest lay bare to the flames. She saw them then, scars like claw marks carved into stone, lines that twisted over his ribs, burns that no natural fire could have made. They weren't just wounds, they were maps of survival, a story told in skin. Her gaze lingered too long, and he noticed. His jaw tightened. "They don't fade. No matter how many times I shift, they stay. Who did this? She whispered. My brother. The words landed heavy between them. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The pain in his voice told enough. Arya swallowed, her heart caught between pity and fury. Slowly, she lifted her arm and showed him the scars that shackled her wrists. Thin lines, ridged and ugly, etched deep from years of iron chains. She forced herself not to flinch when his gaze fell on them. They don't fade either, she said softly. His eyes softened, gold melting into something dangerously close to tenderness. He didn't touch her, not yet, but his silence said what his hand didn't. I see you. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel ashamed. The days that followed weren't only healing, they became something else. Chaol began to teach her control. The silver fire was unpredictable, wild. Sometimes it answered her call, sometimes it lashed out, burning everything within reach. More than once she nearly lost herself, her body trembling as the fire clawed up her throat, demanding release. Breathe with it, Chaol instructed, his hand steadying hers, his breath hot at her ear. Don't fight it. Feel it. Shape it. Her body shook, sweat dripping down her temple as silver sparks danced between her palms. You can. His voice was steel, unyielding, but beneath it lay something softer, urging. You are not the fire's prisoner. It is yours. She closed her eyes, feeling his presence wrap around her like a shield. His hands never left hers, and when at last the flame bent, coiled in her palms instead of spilling wild, she gasped. I did it, she whispered. Chaol's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but the shadow of one. You did. One night, the cave opened into starlight. The storm had broken, leaving the world washed clean, the air sharp with pine and snow. They stood outside, the night vast above them, constellations sprawling like 1,000 watching eyes. She should have been afraid of the prophecy, of his pack's hatred, of her fire, but for a fleeting breath, all she felt was the stillness between them. Chaol stood close, too close, his heat radiating through the cold air. His gaze caught hers, gold meeting silver, and the world narrowed until it was only them. Her lips parted. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled in her throat. He leaned in. Not all the way, just close enough that the air burned between them, close enough that she felt the pull of him like a tide. The moment stretched, fragile as glass. And then she turned away, her chest heaving. I can't lose myself to the fire. Her voice cracked, soft but sharp as a blade. If I give in, if I burn too bright, I won't come back. For a heartbeat, silence. Then his voice, low, certain, unshakable. I see you, all of you, and I choose you. The words struck harder than any prophecy. Her throat tightened, her chest aching in ways chains never taught her. No one had ever chosen her. Not when she was chained, not when she was cast out, not even when she burned for survival. But he did, not despite her fire, because of it. And in that fragile moment, with the stars above and the fire within, she let herself believe. But not everyone shared his choice. Deep in the shadows of the camp, a rival she-wolf watched. Her eyes gleamed with hatred, sharp and unyielding. She had lost too much to Chaol's mercy, too much to this girl who carried doom in her veins. Arya might have Chaol's protection, but the she-wolf knew one truth. If the pack could not turn their alpha away from her, they would turn Arya into the monster the prophecy promised. And when that day came, not even Chaol's golden fire would be enough to save her. The betrayal did not come like thunder. It came quietly, insidiously, the way poison seeps into blood before the victim knows they've been struck. It began with whispers, uneasy glances across the fire, conversations that stopped when Arya entered. The air thickened with suspicion, invisible chains wrapping tighter each day. Chaol's pack, already divided, now bristled with the sharp scent of doubt. And then came the evidence. A blood-stained scrap of parchment, strange markings carved into bone, a messenger intercepted with a sealed letter bearing Arya's hand, None of it real. She knew that with every beat of her heart. But the illusion was perfect, damning. The rival she-wolf presented it to the council with cold precision, her eyes gleaming with victory. "Here is your salvation," she spat, her voice carrying for all to hear. "The flame-born witch who worms her way into our alpha's bed, only to deliver us to ruin." Gasps tore through the hall. Arya's throat closed. The evidence lay before her, undeniable to the eyes of others. But she saw Kakal, standing rigid in the center, his face a mask she could not read. She searched for him, for the anchor that had steadied her when the fire threatened to devour her. But he did not meet her gaze. The trial burned hotter than any flame. Voices rose, snarled accusations, teeth bared in fury. "She is a spy. She will bring death. The prophecy warned us." Arya tried to speak, her voice cracked through the chaos. Desperate, raw. "It sets a lie. I have never." "Enough." The eldest counselor barked, his staff striking the floor. The sound cut the noise like a blade. His eyes, clouded but sharp, fixed on Chaol. "You are Alpha. Say the word, and she is judged." Every soul turned toward him. Chaol's chest rose, fell. His jaw worked as though grinding stone. He looked at Arya, at last, and hesitated. That hesitation was a knife. Her heart clenched, breaking before her mind could catch it. The man who whispered he chose her, who held her scars as if they were sacred, who promised she was more than fire, hesitated. The silence dragged, louder than any roar. Doubt slithered through the pack like smoke, feeding their fury. If Chaol did not defend her instantly, then what did it mean? The rival she-wolf's lips curled. "See, even he knows. The prophecy was never salvation. It was doom. The flame will consume the Alpha." The words struck like a curse, twisting ancient lines into something venomous. Arya's chest tightened, breath ragged. She reached for Chaol, with her eyes, pleading, "Tell them." Her voice shook. "Tell them the truth." But his lips did not move. His hands did not reach. He stood in silence. Something inside her snapped. The fury she had caged, the fear she had choked, the fire she had begged to control, all of it surged. Her body trembled as silver light bled through her skin, veins igniting with raw power. Gasps filled the hall as the fire poured from her, a tide she could no longer dam. The walls groaned under the heat, shadows burned away. The very air screamed as silver flame coiled into an inferno, blinding, terrible, alive. Packmates stumbled back in horror, shielding their eyes. Some dropped their knees. Others snarled, ready to strike. But none moved closer. Chaol did not flinch. His gaze locked on her, wide, unyielding, as if he were staring at both his salvation and his destruction. Arya's voice rose over the roaring fire, ragged, furious, heartbreak woven into every syllable. "You wanted prophecy? Here it is. The flame you fear, the curse you twisted, it is mine, and it will burn every lie you've chained me with." Her hair whipped in the storm of heat. Tears streamed down her cheeks, sizzling into smoke before they could fall. Her chest ached as though her heart itself was ablaze, not with power but with grief. She turned her gaze to Chaol, her voice breaking. "You were supposed to see me." The word shattered the last piece of her restraint. The fire burst outward, a silver inferno that rattled the stone hall to its bones. Pillars cracked, symbols carved in ancient walls glowed as though awakened. The pack cowered, their roars drowned by the blaze. And then, silence. The flames vanished. Arya stood in the ruins of what had been judgment. Her body shook, her chest heaving, her hands blackened with soot. Ash clung to her lashes, her lips, her scars. No one moved. The pack stared as though she were no longer flesh and blood but something other, an omen, a weapon, a goddess of ruin. Her throat burned. Her eyes found Chaol one last time. Hope flickered weakly, begging for a word, a gesture, anything. But his silence remained. The betrayal carved itself deeper than any chain. She fled. The council's shouts blurred into echoes. Claws scraped stone as she bolted into the night, the cold air slicing her lungs. The forest swallowed her, branches tearing at her skin, the earth trembling with her fire, still leaking in sparks at every step. Her heart thundered louder than the pursuit behind her. Each breath cut sharp. Each tear blurred her vision. He hesitated. The thought burned fiercer than the silver fire. Kale's silence had been her sentence. Not the council, not the pack. Him. And as the shadows of exile closed around her, Arya felt something colder than chains coil inside her. It wasn't death, just heartbreak. It was transformation. The night of reckoning fell without mercy. The pack's valley, once shrouded in quiet watchfulness, split open beneath the roar of war. Black flames slithered across the ridge, unnatural and venomous, painting the sky with ash. Wolves scattered as shadows fell in waves, soldiers of darkness tearing through the forest. The enemy had come, Kale's own brother, the shadow dragon whose betrayal had once cost him his mate, now returned to claim everything. The air shook under the weight of his arrival. Massive wings blotted the moon. His voice was thunder, deep and cruel. Kneel, Kale, or watch them all burn. The pack bristled, but faltered. Fear bled into the soil, and Kale, though defiant, bore the scars of too many battles. His shoulders hunched, as though carrying every failure, every death, every wound that had never healed. It was the moment the world expected him to fall, but the world had not reckoned with her. The forest lit silver. Arya stepped from the shadows like fire given flesh. Her skin glowed with the storm burning beneath it, veins alive with molten light. Her eyes, those eyes once lowered in shame, once turned away in grief, now burned brighter than the moon itself. Gasps rose from Kale's pack. Some whispered her name like prayer, others in dread. The silver fire flared higher with every step, snow melting under her bare feet, branches igniting where she passed. The air bent to her, the very ruins around them shivering, as if in recognition. The prophecy they had twisted, the curse they had feared, it had come to stand before them, no longer chained, no longer running. Kale's chest seized. He had seen her aflame before, but never like this. This was not a woman trying to contain her power. This was power claiming its vessel. The shadow dragon's laugh shook the valley. So, the little witch returns. Do you come to kneel as well? Or will you burn with the rest? Arya's voice cut across his, fierce and unshaken, a blade of sound that pierced the chaos. I am not your sacrifice. Her fire surged, silver waves crashing outward, scattering his shadow spawn into smoke. I am not your curse. Her gaze swept across the pack, every wolf who had doubted, every elder who had spat her name as ruin. Then her eyes locked on Kale, steady, unflinching. I am your alpha's flame. The words struck like lightning, rewriting prophecy in the very air. The ruins answered. Symbols carved by forgotten hands flared to life across the valley walls. Stones cracked open to reveal molten light beneath. The earth trembled as if waking from centuries of slumber. And above them, the sky split. Dragon fire, golden and ancient, cracked through the heavens, meeting Arya's silver blaze. The clash of forces was deafening. A cosmic war written across the stars. Wolves dropped to their knees, not in fear, but in awe. Kale staggered, chest burning with something fierce and fragile all at once. He had called her flame dangerous, cursed, unbearable, and yet here she was, not destroying them but shielding them. Not a prophecy's puppet, but a force that bent destiny to her will. For the first time in years, hope clawed its way back into his lungs. The shadow dragon lunged. His form, half beast, half nightmare, slammed into the earth with claws the size of blades. His black fire roared, smothering trees, choking air. But Arya did not flinch. Her silver fire coiled tighter, hotter, condensing until it blazed like a star trapped within her chest. She raised her hands, the glow spilling between her fingers like liquid light. You think darkness devours flame? Her voice rang, steady, fierce. Then you've forgotten, fire consumes shadow. She hurled the inferno. The valley exploded in brilliance. Silver met black in a war of elements, light against void, flame against night. The ground cracked, stones flew, wolves howled. The clash rattled every soul watching, shaking them to marrow. And through it all, Arya stood unyielding. Chaol leapt to her side, dragon wings tearing open, golden fire ripping from his lungs. Together, flame and flame collided with shadow. For a heartbeat, they were unstoppable, two halves of a storm, a union destiny had feared, denied, but could not destroy. The shadow dragon reeled, bellowing in fury. His form cracked, tendrils of darkness unraveling under the combined blaze. But his voice, venomous and cruel, still carried through the chaos. She will consume you, brother. She is the prophecy. Your flame will be your end. Chaol snarled, his voice thunder itself. No, she is my beginning. Arya's fire answered, brighter, fiercer, alive with every scar she carried, every humiliation she had survived, every moment she had chosen not to kneel. And in that blaze, the world itself bowed. The ruins quaked, the sky burned, wolves howled not in fear, but in reverence. Arya's voice rose, a vow that carried to every ear, every trembling soul, every shadow that thought itself eternal. I am not your curse. I am not your sacrifice. I am fire reborn, and I will not burn alone. Her silver inferno surged, swallowing the battlefield, consuming the shadow dragon's roar, until nothing remained but ash and silence. And in that silence, the world shifted. Silence. The battlefield lay in ruin, silver ash glowing faintly, where Arya's fire had devoured shadow. The air still quivered with heat, the scent of scorched stone clinging to every breath. Wolves stood scattered across the valley, their fur bristling, eyes wide, bodies trembling, not from the cold of night, but from the raw power they had just witnessed. And at the center of it all stood Arya. Her chest rose and fell with ragged breath, silver flame still flickering faintly around her hands, as if reluctant to die. Her hair clung damp to her face, eyes shining brighter than any star in the sky. The girl who had once run barefoot and chained, hunted through snow, now stood as the conqueror of shadows. But victory did not feel like triumph. It felt like a question. They stared at her, the pack, some with awe, some with devotion already carving itself into their bones. Yet others shrank back, whispering curses beneath their breath, their fear thick as smoke. Would they ever accept her? Could they? One wolf stepped forward, an elder with frost in his muzzle, his gaze sharp as steel. He bowed his head, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. She saved us, but at what cost? Another snarled, bitterness biting each word. She is power unbound. No one holds a flame without being burned. And so the question hung heavy in the night, heavier than any roar of war. Would you choose her, or fear her too? Arya felt their eyes pierce her skin like blades. She could taste their doubt, their suspicion, their awe. Every judgment dragged her back to chains, back to the days of her old pack calling her slave blood, back to nights where her fire was nothing but a curse. Her fingers clenched. She wanted to scream, to demand they see her, not the prophecy, not the flame, but the woman who had fought to survive, the woman who had bled for them tonight. Yet when her lips parted, the words refused to come. Because deep down, she wasn't sure if she believed it herself. Chaol's hand found hers. His grip was firm, grounding. His golden eyes burned with something fierce, unwavering. He had seen her at her worst, her most broken, her most dangerous, and still, he stood. But even his presence couldn't silence the storm inside her chest. Was she savior, or was she the curse they had always feared? Was she the fire that would warm, or the blaze that would consume? The wolves watched, waiting for an answer, waiting to decide if she was salvation, or the herald of their end. The valley seemed to whisper with the weight of it, each shadow, each ember pressing into her skin like invisible chains. And so the narrator Sep's question now drifts to you, lingering, echoing like the toll of an ancient bell. Would you choose her? Would you trust the girl who carries fire in her veins, who shattered chains only to stand where no one dared stand before? Or would you turn away, whispering as the others do, that no flame burns forever without leaving ash behind? And if your chest aches, if your heart beats faster, if you feel the sting of her pain as though it were your own, then perhaps you already know your answer. Perhaps you see not a curse, but a girl who refused to kneel. Perhaps you see not destruction, but the kind of love that burns brighter than fate itself. If this story lit something inside you, don't let it fade. Subscribe to Clarissa Romance Collections, where love defies chains, where fire becomes freedom, and where every tale reminds you that destiny is not written in prophecy, but in the choices we dare to make. Because here, we tell stories that burn. And this one, Arya's fire, is only just beginning. The fire dimmed, but the night did not rest. Ash drifted like snowflakes over the ruined valley, the last remnants of Arya's silver blaze still glowing faintly against the torn earth. Wolves lingered in silence, their breaths shallow, their bodies tense, as though the very ground beneath them had not finished speaking. Arya stood tall, her flame at last quieted, though its echo pulsed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. Cale's hand never left hers, anchoring her as the pack tried, and failed, to piece together what they had witnessed. Victory hung heavy in the air, undeniable, yet fragile, as though one breath too loud could shatter it. And then the earth shuddered. A deep groan rose from the roots of the valley, ancient and unsettling, as if the land itself remembered something the living had forgotten. Cracks split through the scorched ground, bleeding faint light, not silver, not gold, but red. The wolves tensed, ears flattening, tails low. The victory that had felt like dawn now curdled into unease. Arya's breath caught. She had felt her fire answer the ruins before. But this was different. This was not her. This was something else. A whisper slithered through the night. Not a voice of flesh and blood, but one that threaded through shadow and bone, low and venomous, carrying across the valley without wind to bear it. She is not the only one. The words coiled like smoke, curling into every ear, seeping into every heart. Wolves shuddered, some whimpering, some looking to the sky, as though the stars themselves had betrayed them. Arya's chest tightened, her pulse slamming against her ribs. She turned, scanning the darkness, searching for the source, but there was nothing. Only night, only silence, only the echo of that promise, if it was a promise at all. The ruins answered again. Symbols that had glowed for her, now flickered with new life, but not in silver fire. Crimson veins spread across the stone, like blood seeping through cracks. The earth trembled harder, a warning, a prophecy, or perhaps a countdown. Cale's jaw clenched, his dragon's eyes burning as he pulled Arya closer. It isn't finished. His voice was low, grave, the weight of a leader who had just realized the war he thought ended had only just begun. Arya swallowed hard, her flame flickering faintly around her fingers. She wanted to deny it, to believe she had been enough, that all her fire, all her pain, all her battles had closed the wound of destiny. But the truth settled cold in her bones. She was not the only one. And so the question stretched beyond the valley, beyond the wolves, beyond the fire still whispering in her blood. If she was flame, what else was out there? If she was one, how many more walked the world, marked by chains, cursed by power, waiting for the night to call them? And if her fire had shaken the ruins, what would theirs do when they rose? The silence deepened, the valley holding its breath, as the stars above seemed to flicker. No, not flicker, but shift, as though constellations themselves turned to watch. Arya's fingers curled tighter around Cale's. For the first time since the battle, her fire felt small compared to the shadow pressing in from beyond. And yet, small or not, it still burned. She lifted her chin, her eyes defiant against the night, as the narrator Sep's final question fell like prophecy itself. If her story is only the beginning, will you follow her into the next? Because the fire has spoken. And this isn't said over.